Lynn met once with a specialist who'd done a TED talk on synesthesia. The woman wore silver boots and smelled like rosemary. After an hour of back and forth descriptions, the doctor leaned back and said, "You may be one of the many rare post-traumatic cross-sensory empaths." Lynn blinked. That sounded like a job title I should be paid for. Post-traumatic cross-sensory empath. The woman smiled. Most people would pay to not feel that much. Lynn left the appointment feeling validated and cracked open. This wasn't just about senses, it was about meaning. Every color, every swirl, every taste or vibration, it actually meant something. Her body was reading the world in a language it hadn't known before, and while she couldn't speak it fluently yet, she was learning. She was learning which colors meant safety, which hues meant disconnection, which tones meant truth, which ones hinted at deception cloaked in politeness. She was learning what it truly meant for her, not as an idea, but as a daily sensory experience. And most importantly, she was learning how to trust it. She walked around the neighborhood with Honeybun, and she didn't see the man's face at first. She walked the same paths as always, headphones on but no music playing, just a habit. The morning was quiet, the kind of overcast that made it feel like a sigh, and she felt it. A sudden wave behind her, like someone had cracked open a jar of chaos and poured it onto the sidewalk. Lynn stopped mid-step and turned. The man was a block behind her, walking fast. His colors were jagged, unstructured, furious, maroon rage tangled with a nauseating green that always meant stimulants. His aura wasn't violent, yet it was raw and unpredictable. Without hesitation, she crossed the street and ducked into the corner cafe. The barista's pink bubble of cheer wrapped round her like a shield. Honeybun rested at her feet, tail still, safe again. She didn't talk about it. She didn't need to. She just knew this isn't a quirk anymore. This could actually be survival. The shift at the bar was next. She'd been doing it once a week for years. Easy money, fun crowd, a dose of energy and flirtation, or so it used to be. Now, it was unbearable. The room buzzed with despair. People smiled while carrying oceans of sorrow behind their eyes. Others radiated lust twisted with something colder, rage disguised as charm. Men who laughed too loudly, women who laughed not at all, people dissolving into their drinks. She could no longer separate her inner world from what she saw. She gave notice. No money was worth that kind of soul depletion. Even her Zoom calls for her office job got harder. Some coworkers glowed, steady hues, playful yellows. They were the kind who let meetings run long just because they genuinely enjoyed the connection. But others, their colors flicked erratically, burnt orange exhaustion, ashy green disappointment, the kind of energies that left her drained before she even had a second coffee. The balance was off, the system too heavy. She needed to get away and unplugged. The retreat was her first full exhale. A friend had mentioned it. Yoga, sound baths, that weird amp thing you'd probably love. Lynn booked it with no expectations, just hope. And it was everything. The meals glowed with care, literally. The people preparing them pulsed with kindness and stability. The yoga moved through her like a prayer. Then came the sound bath. That was beyond description, orgasmic, but not in the sensual way, but in the way that her whole body lit up with pleasure and ease. Frequencies bathed her, and it felt like velvet water. Her cells danced, and for the first time in weeks she felt nourished. And then came amplified mindfulness practice, movement, music, breath. It wasn't about looking good, it was about feeling real. She cried, she laughed. She slept so deeply that night she didn't even dream. A week later, an email arrived from Dr. Bethany Tayan. The subject, referral opportunity, may be a fit for you. The email said, "Hi Lynn, I've had a contract inquiry come through my desk. I think you'd find it interesting. It's consulting work for teams that you want to understand resonance and internal dynamics, emotional intelligence, but through an energetic lens. You'd be well compensated for short, immersive sessions. Think long hours, small windows. I know your senses are sensitive, but this is structured, intentional work and optional always. Let me know if you'd like to be introduced. Warmly, Dr. Bethany Tayan." Lynn stared at the screen for a long time. It felt like a door had opened, not one she'd asked for, yet one that she was absolutely meant to walk through. Chapter 7. Where This Is Happening. Cassie and Jess didn't leave in a huff. There were no slammed doors or passive-aggressive text messages, just a quiet unraveling, a soft fade. They had found a 2-bedroom apartment downtown, cheaper than the house, closer to the clubs, and free from whatever new gravity Lynn had started radiating. "They're not wrong," Lynn said to Trevor one night, folding laundry with a kind of reverence. "I'm different now, and I feel it too." She missed them, of course, missed the easy laughter, the takeout nights, the spontaneous kitchen dance parties, the shared bottles of wine, and the whispered dating recaps. But something in the energy had shifted, so subtly at first, then unmistakably. There were new unspoken rules in the house now, more silence, more space, more stillness, and maybe a little bit too much Trevor, if she was honest. It wasn't that he overwhelmed the space, he just filled it the way people do when you love them and suddenly can't imagine leaving them. Within 6 months, the house was theirs. Lynn's parents owned the house, and the parents made them a generous offer, and Trevor, ever practical, ran the numbers, handled the paperwork, and handed her a pen to sign with was now in their place into their own. They married quietly, a small ceremony with bare feet and wild flowers, then a backyard bash at Trevor's parents' place with a band and too many potato salads. It was lovely, it was all lovely. And yet it still felt like a backdrop to something much larger unfolding inside her. Her contract work had begun, short stints with high-performing teams who wanted to understand each other better. She never revealed exactly what she did, but her presence alone seemed to clear the air. People left sessions saying things like, "I feel like I just got a tune-up," or like, "Why am I suddenly crying?" She spent long stretches at home, journaling, reading, meditating. Trevor never judged her for needing time alone. He didn't understand it, not fully, but he made her tea and watched movies with headphones on. She went to more retreats, more sound baths, more deep dives into what it meant to live this way, not just differently, but truly awake. It sounded peaceful, and sometimes it was, but it was also brutal. There were nights she cried on the kitchen floor, overwhelmed by the way the world ached. There were the days she doubted herself so hard she questioned everything, her sanity, her marriage, her worth. Not all colors were beautiful, not all energy was light. And yet here she was, still choosing this life, still saying yes to the unfolding, still watching every day as it taught her how to live more truthfully. Chapter 8. The Push. She thought she had already reached the edge of what she could handle. Turns out the edge was just the beginning. Her contract work came with fine print, training, assessment, personal development, the kind of thing you skim over, thinking it's just paperwork, until it wasn't. The first time she was flown to a private research facility, it didn't feel like training. It felt like being recruited into something ancient and hidden, something both wild and meticulously organized. There were others like her, people who didn't flinch when she said words taste like metal or that horse has grief in its spine. In fact, they nodded. She started with animals, dolphins in a sensory tank, horses in open fields, an elephant sanctuary in Thailand where she stood for an hour beside a bull elephant and sobbed without knowing why until the trainer said his mate died last month. You were the first to let him show that. They didn't ask her to fix anything. They asked her to listen deeper, to push. "Push, Lynn," said the lead facilitator one afternoon. "Find the door when you're ready at the edge. Now go in." And she did. What came next felt impossible. Thoughts, not full sentences, but intention, images, impressions. The way trees whispered regret. The way the ocean sighed when boats passed overhead. The way a horse sent her the feeling of a sunrise he never forgot. And just like that, she was in. It scared her. The intensity, the exposure, not just of others but of herself. In this space there were no secrets. Those who trained her could see her too fully, her intentions, her fears, her heart. There was no room for ego here, only clarity. And it didn't ruin her life, and it didn't run her life. The stints were intense, yes, but there was time, Just like Dr. Bethany Tan had said, there were times and there was also time to decompress. Time to work, time to decompress. Retreats, home life, honey bun, walks, and quiet. She found a balance. When her brother Jamie was released, she tried. She tried everything. She used every tool she had, every connection, every flicker of insight. She pushed in his presence more than once, hoping to find something, a spark, a thread, a door. But what she found was emptiness, a wall, a refusal, not of just her help, but of himself. He wasn't confused. He was committed to chaos, committed to destruction, and to the belief that he couldn't be saved. And that was when she understood the limit of her gift. She couldn't change someone who had no will to change, so she let him go. Not with anger, not with judgment, but with a kind of mourning. She cut contact for her own peace and for her own survival. Chapter 9. The Descent and the Guide. They told her it might happen, that someday she'd meet someone whose energy was too much, too dense, or too twisted. Someone whose darkness wasn't a wound but a weapon. She didn't think it would happen so soon. It was a private assignment, a low-profile consultation with a client flagged as emotionally volatile. Lynn had reviewed the files, meditated, prepared. She thought she was ready. The moment she pushed, it hit her like black static laced with decay. His mind didn't just resist, it reached back, clawing at her awareness, trying to pull her in. It wanted to merge, consume, devour. She ripped herself out of it, heart racing, bile rising. She barely remembered the plane ride home for days. She couldn't bear to be near people, couldn't look at Honeyben, couldn't even make a cup of tea without crying. She felt hollow and fractured, like some part of her had almost been taken, and she might be slipping. That's when they sent Gideon. He didn't knock. He showed up with a mug of something herbal, a voice like a stone smoothed by river water, and eyes that had seen things that no soul should have witnessed. "Lynn," he said, sitting in her living room like he belonged there, "you've hit the threshold, and you didn't break. You bent. That's good." She didn't respond for a long time. Then finally, she said, "It wanted me." "I know," he said. "I still think it has a piece of me. That's why I'm here," Gideon said. Gideon became her sponsor, though the organization never really used that word formally. At a certain level of trust and commitment, they assigned you someone, a lifeline, a guide, a soul who had already walked the fire. He never told her what to do. He didn't therapize her. He simply sat with her, asked the right questions, taught her how to return to herself breath by breath. "You're not here to save everyone," he once said. "You're here to stay whole. Let that be your first service." Over time, she began to work again, but differently. The earth began calling her in whispers, not people, not companies, the planet itself. She would stand barefoot in a forest and feel a pulse beneath the moss, hear a groan of pressure where a fault line was stretching. She'd know when water was tired, when it needed cleansing, rest, and protection. She could feel the atmosphere change before lightning, before storms. She could taste when the air was holding grief too long and too tightly. Her assignments changed, less corporate, more elemental. Sometimes she'd be flown to a coastal site just to walk the shore barefoot for 3 days. Sometimes she'd spend weeks near a volcano just listening. She was never alone. There were others like her now, quietly doing the work, keeping balance, and always Gideon, not hovering, just there when she needed him to be. Chapter 10. When Darkness Finds You Again. By all accounts, life was good. Lynn and Trevor had settled into a rhythm that worked. She was home for months at a time, cooking, walking, tending to the quiet things, and when she worked, she was never gone longer than 2 weeks. Trevor never made her feel guilty for the time away. He loved her fiercely, yet lightly. The space between them was honored. Even after all she had seen, touched, tasted, she still had a life that worked. Except she'd never fully come back from the incident, the one that no one talked about, the one with the man whose mind who had crawled into hers and left something behind, or taken a part of hers. It had become more like a myth, something she dreamed about now and then, a shadow, a flavor in her nightmares, a memory she never revisited, yet always felt. She thought she was safe, until Honeybun growled at her. It happened slowly. A low, uneasy growl one morning as she poured her coffee. Not playful, not alert, warning. The dog, her beloved Honey Bun, who once lit up the room with joy-colored ripples, now glared at her with eyes that shimmered a sickly hue. The space around her chest tightened. The colors surrounding the dog twisted. Lynn stared, heart racing, hands trembling. Not fear, not pain. Possession. Something had found her. In the days that followed, Honey Bun became unpredictable, sometimes loving, sometimes growling, sometimes silence, but radiating a wrongness, that same black static she had felt during the incident, that pull, the hunger, the hook. At first, Lynn doubted herself, maybe trauma, maybe protection, until the dreams came. Not dreams exactly, encounters. She would wake up gasping, certain something had just swiped through her consciousness with a claw tipped in need. The room would taste sour. The air would turn. Trevor began to notice her fatigue. "You okay?" he asked, brushing her hair back. She wanted to say yes. She wanted to believe it was nothing, but it wasn't. Whatever had once reached into her mind had found a way back. This time, it had chosen the most intimate vessel it could. She called Gideon at 3:14 a.m. He answered on the first ring. "I need help," was all she said. "I'm already on the way." He didn't come alone. 3 agents arrived at dawn, quiet and intentional, not alarming, but ready. Honey Bun was already crated, not just safety, but for separation, because the entity inside had attached to the dog. The dog now hissed. It hissed. It didn't bark. It didn't growl. It hissed like steam escaping from hell itself. The colors were wrong, so deeply wrong that Lynn couldn't describe them. Not red, not black, not bile, just void. The kind of absence that made her skin crawl. "I can't get rid of her. She's mine. She's my baby." "No, she's not anymore," Gideon said softly. "She's gone." The crate was loaded into a containment vehicle and taken to an off-site location, highly secured and shielded. Lynn collapsed onto the floor of the living room, weeping so hard her ribs ached. "I loved her," she sobbed. "You still do," Gideon said, "and that's why she was used. Not because you were weak, but because love is the deepest access point." They sat in silence for a long time, long enough for Lynn to feel the ache shift into grief, into fury, into resolve. She spent so much time learning how to see color, feel truth, walk in peace. And now she would learn to fight. Not with weapons, not with fear, with clarity. Chapter 11, The Severing. She didn't fight fire with fire. She didn't fight with fists or range or assaults or spells. She fought with something more far dangerous, presence. The containment room was carved into the earth. Quiet, layered in copper and ash wood, etched with patterns Lynn couldn't understand but trusted. The agents moved like water, steady and silent, trained in the unseen. Gideon stood beside her, not as a shield, but as a pillar. "We're not going in to destroy it. You're going in to reclaim yourself." Lynn nodded. She had already said goodbye to Honey Bun, already wept, already screamed in the privacy of her car until her throat burned. Now it was time. The dog was in the center of the space, her beloved, her companion, her mirror, and she was no longer there. What remained hissed and shimmered and stared. The colors around her pulsed with distortion like oil across shattered glass. Lynn stepped forward. At first her knees buckled under pressure, the clawing static, the sucking despair. She had to dig her fingers into her own thighs to stay present. Gideon's voice anchored around her. "Push, not onto the dog, not into the entity, into herself." She found the thread, not the pain, not the memory, the part of her it took, and she pulled it back. She called it. She summoned it, not with force, but with truth. "I am Lynn," she said aloud, "and you cannot live here anymore." The entity snarled, but she did not flinch. "I felt sorry for you once. That was my mistake. You don't want healing, you want feeding, and I am not your food." The air cracked. Lynn reached with her whole being, colors, breath, will, and closed the door. Not slam, close, firmly, gently, finally. Dog let out one final sigh. The colors disappeared and Honey Bun was gone. She knelt beside the body, still trembling, no hissing, no darkness, no shimmer, just fur, just silence, just peace. She buried her face in her hands and wept, not only for the dog, but for the moment she gave away to fear, for the tenderness that was taken, for the strength that cost to get it back. Gideon stood quiet and then knelt beside her. You didn't kill it. You refused to carry it anymore, and that's power. Final chapter. More than she seems. 10 years later. At first glance, Lynn looked like every other well-put-together woman in her 40s. She brought organic muffins to PTA meetings. She wore leggings and linen layers and knew exactly which teachers to email and when to pack extra snacks. She facilitated mindful movement sessions at women's retreats with calm authority and eyes that seemed to see right through you in a way that made people exhale and not hide. She clapped at school plays, hosted potlucks. She called what she did for a living on-site work, and no one asked more. She was exactly what she appeared to be, and so much more. No one knew that her breath alone could shift the emotional tone of a crowded auditorium, that she could stand barefoot in a forest and feel whether the land was hurting, or the ocean sometimes whispered to her in her sleep. No one knew that when a stranger brushed past her at the grocery store, she could feel the exact age they stopped believing they were lovable. No one knew what it cost her to carry what she carried, the dark things she had faced, the love she had lost, the part of herself that once she had to fight to reclaim. She didn't lead with that. She didn't need to. Now, she just led with a lightness, with clarity, with the grace of somebody who had walked through fire and remembered to look for flowers on the other side. Once she had been pulled into a world she couldn't understand. Now she anchored that world, with Trevor beside her, with colleagues across the oceans, with a stillness that wasn't weakness but wisdom. There were newer ones now, fresh initiates, just learning to taste the truth, to see the unspoken. They didn't know her history, they just called her Lynn. Because real power doesn't need to be announced, it just is. The end. Thanks for being with me for this story.